I won't dress this up. My name is Maria del Carmen, and I don't know when loving a daughter turned into a closed room where there isn't enough air to breathe. I can say it without my voice shaking because I've learned how to tame my throat. You breathe, you place the words like clean gauze, and you watch as they stop the bleeding. What I'm about to tell happened in Santo Domingo today, with the noise of Churchill Avenue outside, new buildings rising like empty promises, and the Malecon smelling of salt and corner-fried food. It happened in my house. Not a large one, but its walls have heard laughter, coughing, and 2 long farewells. My mother's, who left like an old candle guttering out, and Antonio's, my husband's, whose voice I still hear at dawn saying, "Close that window, Carmina, the breeze is coming in and the bed's getting wet." The breeze still comes in. He doesn't. I was a nurse for 36 years. I learned to measure with my eyes. Skin turning ashen, a pulse quickening, a lie slipping through. What I'm proudest of isn't my diplomas or the sleepless shifts. It's my precision. With a thin needle, I could find hidden veins in trembling arms. With that same precision, I began to notice something beneath my own roof, a bruise forming under the skin. Raul, my son-in-law. Real estate agent, gleaming smile, a watch that flashes too much. Vilma, my daughter. The same tight mouth I have when I don't want to cry. Everyone calls her La China since school. Those slightly slanted eyes from my grandmother's side. And the boy, Ale, faultless, still carrying that scent of a child fading into adolescence, that mix of fresh cologne and playground sweat, his homework always half done, a soccer ball glued to his hand. They used to come over on Sundays for lunch. Mango with fried cheese when nostalgia called, or rice, beans, and stewed chicken, steady, familiar Dominican. But a year ago, Raul started showing up during the week. I was nearby, Suegra, just after a showing, he'd say, bringing me queso de hoja from the corner shop and flowers that looked too perfect. I've always been allergic to overacted perfection. I'm not suspicious by sport, but gestures betray. When someone avoids meeting your left eye. When they hold your hand just a second longer, as if to feel how much you tremble. When they call you pretty mother-in-law with a touch softer than cotton. At the hospital, I could spot that look in relatives asking for early discharges. There's a certain gleam that isn't affection, it's calculation. Raul began to have that look. My house, my home in Gascue, with its concrete patio that fits 3 geranium pots and a mango tree that no longer bears fruit, the worn tiles in the living room, the fan humming over the dining table. I'm not exaggerating when I say my life leans against this house's shadows. They say the new metro line is driving people to sell for good money. They say apartments in Piantini and Naco resell themselves. They say many things in a city that never stops talking over you. I hear the engines at dawn and understand the rush. Everyone wants to get ahead. Especially Raul. The first time he mentioned getting the papers in order, he did it with that childish casualness of someone pretending everything's already agreed upon. Suegra, look, Vilma and I were talking about securing your future. You know how things are. Private hospitals cost a fortune, Social Security doesn't cover enough, and this house, lovely as it is, isn't really paying off. We could put it in the boy's name or something like that with a power of attorney so we can handle things if you're ever gone. Just to avoid any confusion. I laughed on the inside. On the outside, I just tightened my grip on the coffee cup. He wasn't ready for my silence. I let him talk. Salesmen tangle themselves if you give them enough rope. He mentioned a friendly notary, talked about property value, about how smart it would be to plan ahead. I won't use the word greed. It's too small for what I saw in his face. What I saw was an old hunger dressed in an expensive suit. That's when I knew my precision, my skill, would have to serve another purpose. Not to place IVs, but to fake something, fragility. That night, as I lay in bed, I recited my nightly rituals like prayers. The gas valve off, the coffee pot cleaned, the blood pressure pills in the blue cup, the rosary on the nightstand, the fan aimed at my feet. Something was missing, and I found it in a memory, from the Billini Hospital corridor years ago, when an orderly once said, "If you want to know who really loves you, let them hold your back when no one's watching." I was going to find out who held mine, or who wanted to take it away. Faking senility is an art. Not everyone can do it. The secret is not to overplay it. One day, I called Ale by his father's name. Another, I stared at the door as if waiting for Antonio. By the third week, I forgot to pay the electric bill, small, calculated, and let the ED office call me. Vilma got worried. Raoul smiled, with a tenderness so rehearsed it could have come from a manual. I practiced in the mirror. A trembling hand, a laugh that dies mid-sentence. Then I reached out to a friend, not the coffee-drinking kind, but the kind who knows your blood type and your brand of dark humor. His name is Felix. Used to be a maintenance technician at the clinic where we both worked for years. Different uniforms, same habit of saving leftover screws. Felix has saintly hands for opening radios, locks, and when needed, consciences. I need eyes where people don't look, I told him. Nothing invasive, just something that gives me the truth back. He looked at me with those old boy eyes of his and nodded without asking for details. I didn't need to tell him it was about my house. In Santo Domingo, everyone understands the word house as if it were a person. He installed 3 tiny cameras. One in the living room, hidden inside the wall clock that ticks with the patience of the years. Another in the dining room lamp, its eye so discreet that I often forgot it was there. The third one in the hallway to my bedroom, tucked inside a smoke detector I never owned. He worked at night during a blackout, the inverter holding on, the two of us moving like shadows, careful not to bump into the chairs. Don't worry about the internet, he explained. They record on memory and upload to the cloud when the power comes back. I'd always thought the cloud was a poet's invention. Turns out it's quite useful. He also hid a microphone in the base of the landline phone, the one nobody uses anymore but that still sits there like a relic. Not out of paranoia, I tell myself. Out of soul hygiene. The first week, the recordings were dull, which is another way of saying normal. Me cooking. Me brewing coffee. Me dusting the cabinet that belonged to my mother. Vilma came alone on a Thursday, brought a bag of bread, and brushed my hair slowly, as if I were 6 years old again. Mommy, we need to do something about this house. That gate's rusting, she said. I put my hand over hers, pressed her fingers. I didn't want to talk about rust. I wanted to talk about her fear. We didn't. That night, I watched the video and felt her hand in my hair again. It hurt. The blow came on a Tuesday at noon. I was in the kitchen, setting out water and oats for the next morning's breakfast. Being prepared keeps me steady, when Raoul walked in, carrying the air of a man bringing salvation in a folder. Vilma stayed in the car on the phone. Raoul sat at the table, opened a blue folder stamped with seals that looked legitimate from a distance, and spread out several papers over the plastic fruit pattern tablecloth. They had that shine and heft of lies that want to be believed. Look, Suegra, here's the power of attorney. Nothing complicated. Just a couple signatures here and here, and we'll avoid any trouble later, he said. I looked at the dates, the names. My husband's name appeared on a document pretending to be an old donation. Antonio dead, signing. My pulse went still, like when the anesthesia takes hold. I don't sign anything without my glasses, I murmured, searching through my bag where I knew they weren't. I exaggerated the tremor in my hand just a bit. If you want, I can read it for you, Suegra, he offered. And he started reading from a document that wasn't the one he'd placed in front of me. 2 versions. An experience cheat. He's done this before, I thought. That's when I knew my precision would have to become surgical. I feigned fatigue. Let me take a little nap. Come back this afternoon with Vilma, I said. He gathered everything, leaving, perhaps by accident, the corner of the folder sticking out, where I could see the notary's seal. I won't mention the name, not to hide it, but because what matters isn't who, but the system that allows it. This city has learned to normalize its clumsiness. On the corner, the OMSA bus passes by, and everyone knows it never keeps its schedule. On paper, stamps pass by saying something is legal, and few have time to ask where the ink came from. When Raoul left, I looked at the clock. made coffee even though it was late, called Felix. Watch the video when it uploads. There's gold in there, I said. 2 hours later, I had a copy of the audio on a USB drive, hidden inside the rice jar in the cabinet, where no one ever looks. In the audio, beyond the city's hum and a shopkeeper shouting his offers in the distance, you can hear Raul's voice during a call he made from my living room, as relaxed as if he were in his own yard. Yes, yes, the power's ready. With the dead man's old signature, you got me. No, the old lady doesn't understand anymore, she's gone. It's done today. And about the commission, like I said, 20 for the paperwork. What about the notary? Oh, the notary's mine. He only lowered his voice for that last line, the one that revealed his stupidity. People think that whispering erases the crime. I didn't confront him right away. Years have taught me that in an emergency room, the worst enemy is haste. And that sometimes to save you have to wait until the edge of the wound is clear. That afternoon, I left everything untouched. Made a small sancocho, sliced open an avocado that cooperated, and turned the radio on low, boleros floating like incense. Vilma and Raul came back. Ale stayed in the car, playing on his phone. Raul looked nervous, and friendlier than ever, cloyingly so. That kind of sweetness is a glass of lukewarm water nobody asked for. And your glasses, suegra? He asked, handing me the papers again. Patience, son. Everything in its time, I said, and held his gaze. He had to look away. I didn't sign. I didn't shout. I didn't make a scene. Silence, when used well, cuts like a scalpel. That night, Vilma called, as I knew she would. Mommy, Raul's just trying to help. Stop thinking the worst. We don't want you to be left with nothing if one day. She stopped, unable to say the word death, which pulses under my tongue from time to time. What was missing for you, Vilma? I asked. What wound are you trying to heal with paperwork? Her voice cracked. She talked about the rent going up, Ale's school, the new towers casting shadows on their block. I believed her, partly. The other part was a hollow I refused to fill with pity. I barely slept. Heard motorcycles along Independencia, a dog barking in the street, my bones creaking. At dawn, I sat in the rocking chair and waited for light. When the old wait, time falls onto the table like crumbs of bread. After a while, Felix knocked softly. He brought me a copy of the video, another of the audio, and a piece of advice without sermon. Whatever you do, protect yourself, without hurting yourself. I hugged him. It felt like embracing someone from my own tribe, the kind that know how to repair things without making noise. I did something I may never forgive myself for. I asked Vilma to come alone. I told her I wanted to talk about her childhood and didn't want Raul to get bored. That small white lie was the ticket to a very dirty truth. She came by bus. Her hair tied high, just like when she was a girl and we'd go to the supermarket on 27 de Febrero to watch the lights without buying a thing. I served her coffee, closed the windows, turned down the radio, took out the USB drive, plugged it into my little TV with an adapter, and let her husband speak in our living room. Raul's voice filled the space, unaware of its own gravity. I watched my daughter pale. I saw the sweat that look people get when the ledge beneath them starts to crumble. She didn't cry. She just took a deep breath, like someone about to walk into the sea at night. What are you going to do? I asked her. It wasn't reproach. It was diagnosis. I can't let Ale end up without a home. If something happens to you, he needs to have something, she said, looking at me as if I were to blame for the existence of her fear. I could hear that subterranean tremor in her voice, the one people use when caught between love and survival. I gave her the choice I prepared the day before. Either you help me stop him from robbing me, or you stand beside the thief. Your son is watching even if you can't see it, and I'm going to defend myself even if my eyelid trembles. I didn't say the word prison. I didn't have to. In the video, the word crime tied its own knot. Vilma left without saying what she'd do. I stayed behind, feeling the weight of a wound that wouldn't close neatly. I felt sorrow. I felt rage. And I felt hungry, because sometimes emotions demand something tangible. I made myself a cheese and tomato sandwich, sat in the patio, and looked at the mango tree that bears no fruit. Thought of Antonio. Never trust the man who stares at your ceiling while asking for a glass of water, he once told me. I laughed then, and now I understand he was starving to know what I never did. Some things arrive late, like certain buses. Everything that followed happened fast, though I felt it in slow motion. Vilma came back 2 days later, holding a thinner folder and a voice that wasn't quite hers. I went to see a lawyer, she said. She told me this is a crime, that this isn't care, it's dispossession. She asked if I was willing to testify. I told her I just wanted to protect my son. She looked at me the way you're looking at me now. I don't know if I'm doing this right, Mommy. Her honesty stung like alcohol on a wound. I stroked her forehead. You're doing it, I told her. I could say the rest was mechanical and redemptive, but that would be a lie. Filing a complaint is a maze. The city is full of offices guarded by security men who ask why you're there, windows where clerks yawn, and hallways with posters promising access to justice in cheerful fonts. A prosecutor's office or a notary could be temples, if they weren't so tired. We took the video, the audio, and the advice of a lawyer friend of Felix's friend. Don't ask me for the legal details. At my age, whatever I learn about laws leaks right back out through my ears. But I do know this. When the truth has weight, it moves through paper like a well-placed drip. It's slow, but it reaches where it must. Raul found out before they even knocked on his door. Santo Domingo is small. Maybe he sensed it from Vilma's silence, or from my steady, unbothered stare. He called me ungrateful, distrustful old lady. Worn-out words. When we hung up, I figured he'd come to make a scene. He didn't. Instead, Ale showed up with a messy letter and a drawing of a house made of all of us. Children draw the truth in crayon. One afternoon in Gascue, in that hour when the sun hits from the side and balconies seem to pause mid-breath, a white car parked in front of my house. Not Raul. A man in a dark suit and a woman with a Monday face. They introduced themselves with formalities, told us we needed to make our statements. I carried the USB in my bra, close to my chest. Women hide life in places men never look. We both testified. When we came out, Vilma hugged me the way she did that day she fell off her bike on San Vicente and scraped her knees. That mix of pain and relief that comes from telling what must be told. I don't know if it was justice or chance, but Raul didn't get the chance for much theater. They found him. I don't know if he felt shame. I don't even know if he knows how. They say he tried to explain that it was all for the family's good, that I'd lost my mind. I'll never know what face he made when they played him his own voice, echoing through my living room. I wish I could have seen his eyes. Some eyes just fall to the floor when a lie gives itself up. Vilma moved out, not to run from me but from him. I could tell by how she packed their few things from the rental house, like someone gutting a fish carefully, trying not to burst it open. Elle didn't ask much. You don't need to wrap the truth too tightly for children. You give it to them in pieces they can chew. Your father made a mistake. Your mother and I are making sure he doesn't make another, I told him. He crumpled a piece of paper, aimed at the hallway basketball hoop, and missed. Then he looked at me serious. What if he just says he's sorry? I didn't know how to answer. There were consequences. There always are. I stayed in my house, painted it a lighter color, as if that could lift the air in the rooms, changed the gate, opened the closets and took out clothes that smelled of another time. I started fixing the kitchen, as if putting order there could help me make sense of continuing. Vilma was left with a job she doesn't love, a boy who sometimes turns into an adolescent at 7, and a phone that buzzes with numbers she doesn't answer. Roll. I don't know. I don't ask. One learns not to keep watch over other people's punishments. That's their work, and the systems, whether it traps them or lets them slip away. The loss that remained wasn't something tangible like a key, or sellable like a square meter. It was the Sunday table, with one chair I no longer dare to look at, because it once held her laughter. My daughter's laughter. She might forgive me if I say that since then, something in her never quite returns to my house come Elfo. She comes, of course. We make habichuelas con dulce at Easter. She tells me about her co-workers, and Ale throws his arms around my neck to ask if they still sell good empanadas in the Zona Colonial. Sometimes the three of us go. We walk among tourists, and I show him El Conde, the cobblestones, the shadow of the ruins. But there's something she left in that house she shared with him: ease. The ease of looking at each other without feeling the ground under our feet demanding explanations. Now we look at each other with a kind of respect I never asked for, and she wears it like armor. I don't blame her. I have my own shields too, my precision, my quiet voice that doesn't tremble even when my hands do. I never skip the Malecon on Saturday mornings. I sit on a bench facing the sea, watching the new towers reflected on the waves like expensive toys in a bathtub. I watch lovers, old fishermen with patient hands, young men exercising, Yannickek vendors with smoke rising like a toasted prayer. I've learned to love the city in all its excess. I love it for its unapologetic noise, and for the corners where silence still hides. I love it even though its streets sometimes make us strangers to one another. In the salty haze, I think of my house as a heart beating out of loyalty to me. It sounds sentimental, I know, but at this stage, sentimentality is a luxury I allow myself. I've spoken of walls and papers, but what was really at stake was something else. It's called dignity, and it's not abstract. It smells like a made bed, like coffee brewing at 6 a.m., like a wedding photo wiped clean with a soft cloth. It means not accepting perfect flowers without asking where the stem was cut. It's called Ale too, and his future. It's called Vilma, and her new way of stopping the world with her body when something comes crashing toward her. When people ask how I knew, I say I knew the way you know rain is coming, because the air shifts, because a misplaced word weighs heavy, because a man who talks about your house while staring at the ceiling needs a light switched off above his head. Because love doesn't ask you to sign when you're sleepy, because the city speaks even when we don't ask it to. I haven't forgiven Raoul. I don't hate him either. Hatred is a thick blanket in the tropics. It makes you sweat and doesn't keep you warm. I'm content with the exact proof that no strange hand will ever collect rent through my bedroom window. Content that my daughter slept peacefully one night after testifying. Content with the silence that remained, not beautiful but honest. And the honesty of silence tastes better than the noise of a lie. I wish I could say this whole story left me luminous. It didn't. It left me with new shadows under my eyes and a bitter aftertaste like medicine. But it also left a quiet light, the kind that spoke to me the day I straightened the tablecloth and felt the house grow lighter. It's not a light that lets you see far, but enough to keep from stumbling. That's enough for me. Sometimes, when Vilma arrives and sets her purse on her usual chair, I run my hand over her head without her noticing. I check her forehead reflex, not a nurse's habit. She lets me. And Ale, when he hugs me, stays pressed against me for a while, as if he's making sure I'm real. That closeness repairs me. It says something that no law ever could. It says there's still a thread that didn't break. On Sundays, when I'm alone, I make myself cinnamon coffee. Set the good tablecloth. Open the windows. Let the breeze come in, carrying salt and the smell of a bus going the wrong way. The city keeps running outside, and inside everything moves at its own pace. Some afternoons I talk to Antonio. I tell him about the notary and the USB, and I swear I can feel his silence laughing. I tell him I took care of what was ours. He doesn't answer, but the floor stops creaking. That's his way of saying yes. I could end the story there, but there's one detail I don't want to leave out because it was the crack where air came in. One ordinary day, almost a month after it all, Ale showed up with a huge backpack and a wrinkled piece of paper. It was another drawing of a house, with a tree that looked like a green cloud and a sun spilling out of the corner. Below were 3 figures, one with long hair, one taller with a ball in hand, and one with big glasses. He gave me glasses even though I hardly wear them at home, maybe for the joke. With that childish frankness, he said, "Grandma, this house has cameras so nobody can steal it." I laughed. "Don't worry, the cameras are put away." He insisted, "Don't put them away. They also help you see when someone's being bad." I went quiet for a long second. Because that's the other truth. We are watched by the ones we love. And sometimes that's what straightens us out. The night I fell asleep early with the fan pointed at my chest, I dreamed I was walking alone through the Zona Colonial, unhurried. The stones echoed my steps back at me. I passed in front of Parquet Cologne, heard a guitar somewhere, saw shadows of people in black and white photographs I couldn't tell were real. The night air, sharp and slightly mischievous, brushed my forearms. I sat on a low wall and saw the Pharaoh of Cologne glowing in the distance, so bright it looked like a boast. It made me laugh. The city is too much sometimes. So am I. I woke up wanting to give thanks, an act as simple as putting on your shoes. In the morning, I washed the floor with bleach water, hung a sheet in the sun, boiled water, made mango. I had no one to impress. That was the best part of breakfast. If all this sounds more like testimony than a story, that's because it was. I don't want epics. Epics fit well on screens, but at home, things have the texture of a kitchen rag, of grease that takes effort to scrub off. I was precise when I had to be. I pretended when I had to. I hid a camera in a clock and a USB in a rice jar. I tell it without pride, like someone saying, "I washed my hands before touching the wound." Now, when I drive down Winston Churchill and see those glass towers reflecting a sky that always looks too clean, I wonder how many homes are at stake behind those boxes. I'm no judge. I just know how to guard what carries my name. And I know there are kinds of love that disguise themselves as care and aren't. I learned that late, but I learned it. If anyone asks what I did, I'll say, I chose my house. And by choosing it, I chose my daughter and my grandson, even if along the way I lost a piece of joy. Maybe that's what it means to grow up out of season, to realize that sometimes winning is simply holding on to what you already had, even if it costs you laughter that doesn't come as easily. I'm left with a question that tickles from the inside, one I won't say aloud. What did I learn from Raul that could help me forgive without accepting? I don't have the full answer. But I do have a phrase that steadies me when I'm washing dishes and hear an engine hum far away. I decided in time. And that, in this city that runs as if being chased, is already a kind of rest. I don't know if I forgave him, or if I simply stopped thinking about him. But ever since then, the house breathes with me. And that is something.